Hello, what we're going to be doing in this video is we're going to go ahead and write a Java program that will prompt the user for information about a student, and it'll go ahead and write the information to a JSON response file. The information that we're going to be prompting for are the student name, the ID, the program of study, and the level. And then address information, the street address, city, state, and postal code will be part of the address. And then we'll prompt the user for one or many courses. And what the user will respond with for each course is the grade they received and the name of the course. So the JSON format should look like the following. At the root level, we'll have a name, we'll have an ID, we'll have the program, we'll have the level, freshman, sophomore. The program is just the program that the student is enrolled in school. Then we have our address, which consists of the street address, city, state, and postal code. And as you read this JSON format, we have our key value pairs. So the value on the left is the key, then we have a colon, and the value on the right is the value with respect to the key. And then if we look at our courses, we have square brackets. So in JSON, that just signifies that it is an array of course objects that are getting added to our courses. So that's the format of the file that we need to create. And what we're going to be using to create that format is Json Toolkit that allows you to encode and decode JSON in Java. And the name of it is json.simple. It is basically a jar file that you need to go ahead and download. And after you've downloaded that jar file, I'm working in JGrasp, so I need to go ahead and add that jar file to my class path. So if I go into my workspace, I've added the location of where I downloaded that JSON simple -1.1 jar file to, so I can go ahead and I can use it in this program. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at the code. So what we're doing is we're importing the scanner class to gather input from the user. We're importing the JSON object and the JSON array classes that are in our JSON simple.jar file. And in addition, we're going to be importing a linked hash map and a map that we're going to use to map the address information to. So if we go ahead and look at our class, we've created our scanner object. We're going to use that to prompt the user for the input. So 14 and 15, we're prompting the user to enter the name. After the user has entered the name, we're going to go ahead and create our root JSON object. So we just go ahead and call the JSON object constructor to create that root and object. And then after we do that, what we use is we use the put method on the JSON object class to go ahead and add that information to our JSON object that we're creating. So what we need to pass in on the put method is the value of the key, which is name, and then the value of our name, which will be the value that's stored in our name variable. And if we look at the JSON response files, name, ID, program, and level all need to be attached at the root level. So if we go ahead and look at our program, that's what we're doing next. 22 through 26, we grab the ID information and add it to our JSON root object. 28 through 32, we grab the program information and add it to our root object. And 34 through 38, we grab the level information and add it to our JSON root object. So now if we look at our JSON response file, basically the address consists of a map. So within our address, we have a map of key value pairs. We have a street address, we have a city, we have a state, and we have a postal code and for our keys, and then we have our values on the right side of the colon. So what we can use to go ahead and actually gather that information from the user, we're going to use a Java mapped linked hash map object to go ahead and gather that information and store that information in that hash map so we can go ahead and eventually add it to our JSON root object that we created up above. So that's what we're doing next. We're specifying the name, the number of entries in our linked hash map. There will be 4. The first one is for the street address, so that's what we're doing on lines 42 through 45. And by happen chance, there actually is a put command on our map class, our Java map class, and it's same type of format. You pass in the key and then you pass in the value. So lines 42 through 45, we're getting the street address, we're adding it to our address map. 46 through 49, we're getting the city and adding it to our address map. 50 through 53, we're getting the state and adding it to our address map. And then finally, 54 through 57, we're getting the postal code and adding it to our address map. So the final thing we need to do is we need to go ahead and add that address Java map to our root JSON object. And that's what we're doing on line 60. We have our key of address. If we look at our response file, that's what we're using for the key. And then what we're putting is that full map that we created, that map Java object that we created. Okay, so the final thing we need to do is we need to gather the course information. So if we go back into our JSON format file, course information will be stored in an array. And for each one of our course objects, we'll have a grade and a name. So the JSON simple actually provides a JSON array object that you can go ahead and create. So that's what we're doing on line 63. So we're basically creating a JSON array of courses. So what we're going to do is we're going to iterate through this infinite while loop, but we do have a break statement in there. So when the user enters, does not just presses enter without entering a course name, then what we'll do is we'll bounce out of that while loop, break out of it. So what we're doing on line 68 is we're prompting the user for the course, enter the course name. On 67, we're gathering it on 68. If it's empty, we'll break. If not, we'll prompt the user for the grade. After we have the course and grade, then what we're going to do is we're going to create a JSON object, which will be a course object. And then what we're going to put in that course object is the name and the grade that we prompted for up above. So we'll add those to our JSON objects and then our course object that we created. And then we need to add that course to our JSON array. So that's what we're doing on line 82. So we'll continue to do that as long as the user does not press enter. Once the user presses enter, we'll break out of the loop. And the final thing we need to do then is we need to go ahead and add that JSON courses array to our JSON object at the root level. So that's what we're doing on line 86. And then on line 87, I should just add a comment here, is we are printing out the JSON string that we've created previously. So what we can do is there is a method where we can call on any JSON object. It's to JSON string, and basically what that does is it prints out the information in proper JSON format. So we'll go ahead and print that line out, and then after that we're going to go ahead and create a file that we're going to save the information, write the information to. It's going to be called studentgrades.json. So we'll go ahead and we'll create a writer object to go ahead and write that information to the file. We'll call the print method on our writer object, and then we'll just, like we did above, we'll just write our JSON string using the to JSON string methods, and we'll go ahead and write that information to the file, and then we'll just print informational message to the user that it's been written to the file. And on line 96, we're catching a file not found exception. So what we're going to do next is we're going to go ahead and compile and run our program. So let me just go ahead, click on the compile button, go ahead and click on the run. So we'll enter the student's name. It'll be John Doe. We'll enter the student ID. We're just going to type in 123. We're going to enter the program. It'll just be web development. We'll enter the level, be a freshman. We'll enter the street address. It'll just be 100 Main Street. City will be any town. State will be any state. And postal code, we'll just add in 5 zeros for the postal code. And then what we're going to do now is we're in our loop where we're going to enter our courses. So our course name, CIS, we'll just enter 163. And we got a B on that. We'll enter another course name, CIS 156. We received an A on that, and our last course name, CIS 263, and we received an A on that. And then what we need to do is we'll just enter 3 courses. We'll just hit the enter key. And what'll happen is it'll go ahead and print out our JSON string for us, and it printed out our information written to file. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and grab this string, and let me go ahead and, well, what I'll do is I'll just open our file that it was written to. So we have our studentgrades.json file. I'll go ahead, open it up with Notepad. I'll expand it. We have the string in there. So what I want to do is I just want to select the full string, do a Control-C. And what I'm going to open up is a little tool called JSON lint that will go ahead and validate that your JSON is in a correct format. So I'll just go ahead and paste it in there and then click on the Validate JSON button. And what it does is it comes back and it validates the information in your file, and it shows it so it's in a more readable format. The one thing you'll notice is that even though we entered our courses last, they appear first in the list. Basically, when the JSON object gets created, it is, when you see the file, it may not be in any particular order. So what we've gone through in this program is we've just used the JSON simple toolkit to go ahead and write information that we gathered from the user into a properly formatted JSON string. So what we're going to be doing in the next video is we're going to write a Java program that reads the information and displays it to the console. So that's all I had for this video.